Hello and welcome into the Locked On Wolves podcast. We are live on the POSTCAST on the Timberwolves Game 4 win over the Denver Nuggets, forcing a Game 5 in Denver on Tuesday. I'm joined by Marney Gellner from Bally Sports North to break down the game. The Locked On Wolves postcast starts right now.
You are Locked On Wolves postcast, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. I'm joined by Marney Gellner from Bally Sports North. We're going to talk about the Wolves' Game 4 win over the Nuggets. And Marney, just when we think we've seen it all from the Timberwolves team, something like this happens. That I think the headlines for this one, the Wolves force a Game 4 because Anthony Edwards is unbelievable. And also the Wolves gave up a 12-0 run over the last 3 minutes of regulation, almost saw the season end in a really unfortunately fitting way based on how much of the season's gone. But I mean, like, they threw the final punch in overtime. They came out with the win. Anthony Edwards hit the dagger three, and I think we have to start there.
Ant was so good. That three was, man, that was absolute clutch killer. 11.5 seconds left, I think, something like that. But even before that, Nickeil Alexander-Walker hits two killer threes from the baseline. Like, the storylines in this game were just tremendous. I mean, it is the drama and the excitement that you want out of a playoff game we saw tonight at Target Center.
Yeah, and this was, I mean, like, the first half was, I would say, sluggish for both teams. It was just kind of had a weird energy. The Wolves were down 4 at halftime, had a bad close to the second quarter. The third quarter, it wasn't quite as good as the third quarter in Game 2 was back in Denver, but it was very much a good quarter for the Wolves. They got going offensively. They were able to kind of hunt some mismatches defensively, try and create, or offensively, I should say, try and create some defensive mismatches on the Nuggets and defensively. And then in the fourth quarter, the Wolves were able to build this 12-point lead. Ant hit what kind of felt like a dagger from the left wing, and the Wolves were up 12 with 2:50 to play. Denver calls a timeout. And then the Nuggets go on this extended, well, it actually happened pretty fast. It was like three-pointer, Wolves missed shot, three-pointer, Wolves missed shot, three-pointer, Wolves missed shot. And like quickly, this was a two-possession game. Then it was a one-possession game. Came all the way down to it. Jokic, thankfully, split a pair of free throws with about 10 seconds to play, 11 seconds to play. So this thing ended up going to overtime. But this like slow collapse over the final 3 minutes, this poor offense from Minnesota was so concerning. And even in that moment, Anthony Edwards couldn't quite pull them out of this tailspin single-handedly. It was a bit of a different story in overtime, but that close to regulation was just like watching a slow motion, train wreck, and just like really, really disconcerting, I think, for Wolves fans.
It had to be. I mean, being in the arena and just watching people put their hands on their heads in unison was pretty much the reaction that told the biggest story. It was hard to watch. It was, I can't believe we're going to blow this kind of mentality. But you know what? It didn't happen. That's the kind of thing you can look at as, okay, we need to learn from this. We need to watch this back and figure out why this happened and how to not let this happen again, because the Wolves dodged a bullet there. They truly, truly did, but it didn't end up costing them. That was a 2.5 minutes nerve-wracking time frame. It was not fun to be a part of, but the Wolves weathered it somehow, some way. It might not have been the prettiest way to get through it, but it did not cost the Wolves that game. They found a way to win it in overtime. So maybe the lesson here is figure out how that happened and do not let that happen again.
Yeah, and I want to talk a lot about Anthony Alexander-Walker next, but a couple more things on the late game. Well, actually, Chris Finch said post-game, I saw he had a quote about, like, hey, we play best when, there's desperation, when our backs are against the wall, which a lot of time can be coach speak, but that's absolutely true of this team. And we've talked about this all season long on the postcast, is that the Wolves play to the situation. When they're playing a good team, they play better. When they played a bad team in the regular season, they generally played poorly, lost far too many games to bottom rung teams. And then in this series, like, I mean, obviously coming in as the 8th seed, there should have been some desperation thinking like, hey, nobody believes in us. But it took until game 4 for that to like really click. And the Wolves, literally now their backs are against the wall and they play better. I was curious. I didn't catch all the post game. Do you know whether or not was he asked at all about timeout management late in the game? I know the Wolves finished regulation with a timeout in their pocket, and it felt like when Denver was making a 3 every time down the floor that they probably could have called a timeout in there somewhere. Was he asked at all about that post game? Do you know?
Finch was asked about the run and asked about, was it timeouts indirectly? Sometimes we don't hear the question or don't hear it very well. I remember him answering that he likes to save his timeouts for late game situations.
Yeah.
So if that's enough of an explanation, I don't know if it was addressed any further than that by Finch in the postgame.
Okay. Yeah. And that was kind of in real time, I'm thinking, okay, like maybe not after the first couple, but now when it's a 6-point game with a minute left, like you're probably not going to have time to use both of those anyway. So that was in the moment. And I remember that being a hot topic last year in the postseason against Memphis was the timeout management. And it's something I feel like the Wolves have gotten better at this year, but that felt like a big miss to me to end on the wrong side of a 12-0 run with a timeout in your pocket. Just that didn't sit right. But anyway, the positive side, Anthony Edwards, phenomenal. We talked about the dagger 3. He finished this game. I mean, his line was great. 34 points, 12 of 27, but he knocked down 5 threes in this game, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 blocks. I don't know what more we can say. I mean, he was the reason, like the Wolves had nobody else scored more than 19. Mike Conley was actually the Wolves' second leading scorer in this game. Cat fouled out. Rudy did not shoot the ball well, especially early in this game. He was very quiet. This was all about Anthony Edwards kind of keeping the Wolves offense afloat. And this was, again, a national stage where people can see him and say like, hey, there's a reason this kid was an all-star and he is the future of this team.
He was an absolute stud tonight. And watching his post-game press conference, I just don't know how you can't like the guy. You could even be a Denver Nuggets fan and not want him to win and not enjoy him while he's beating your team, but you can't help but like him as a person and his personality. Somebody asked him about his stats or his performance tonight, and he said he played like crap. He said he did not have a good game and said he almost lost the Wolves the game because he took 2 or 3 really bad 3-pointers. So he's honest, honest to a fault sometimes, because Ant also probably won this team the game. He said Nickeil Alexander-Walker won the game. He was giving flowers and praise to Karl Anthony Towns for defending against Jokic physically. He was giving praise to Mike Conley for orchestrating the team and to Nickeil Alexander-Walker for his defense on Jamal Murray and for hitting those 3-pointers. The last person he acknowledged was himself and the way that he played tonight. We all know what this kid is capable of. And I just, as a fan of the team and of his, I just feel like it's so enjoyable to watch him blossom and the experience that he is gaining from these situations. Man, this is a star in the making if he's not already there.
Yeah, the post-game press conference was awesome from Ant, and the 1-minute interview he gave on the court with TNT was great. Just didn't even mention himself. Like usually when you're the one being asked to do that interview post-game, like it's because you had a great, and that's why he was being asked, and he didn't bring himself up. It was perfect. And for us who have seen Ant give interviews all season the last 3 years, I mean that's Anthony Edwards. That's who he is. I do want to talk about Nickeil Alexander-Walker here next. First, let's talk about our title presenting sponsors of the show tonight. That's our friends at PrizePicks. If you had taken Anthony Edwards over on points, you would have been in great shape in this game. If you're wondering how PrizePicks works, it's really easy. You just pick 2 to 6 players, and if they'll score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. You're not competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport that you watch. Of course, that includes the NBA as well as baseball, MLB, now almost a month underway, NHL, playoffs ongoing, any college sport, really anything you can find at PrizePicks. You can make your entries in less than 60 seconds. It really is that easy. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, they'll give you $50. Don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. All right, Nickeil Alexander-Walker was very quiet for much of this game, and again got the start. He started in 3 of the 4 games, was asked to guard Jamal Murray, did a really good job. So, I mean, I guess part of this is Jamal Murray scored 19 points, but it took him 21 shots to do it. Really didn't make much noise at all. There was never like a moment where he went crazy. He had a couple big threes kind of as Denver was coming back in the fourth, but it was all kind of spread out. There was never this like flame-throwing moment for Jamal Murray. I thought Alexander Walker was great, but he had only made 1 shot from the field all game, was 0 for 3 on three-pointers coming into overtime. And then there's a sequence where he hits a corner 3. On the other end, Karl-Anthony Towns fouls out. After he fouls out, on the ensuing possession, Nikola Jokic almost comes down with an offensive rebound. Alexander Walker tips it away from him to Ant. The Wolves come down. Alexander Walker hits another corner 3. And a possession later, he draws an offensive foul. I think it was on Aaron Gordon, and gets the Wolves the ball that way. So just this run of like 4 or 5 possessions where he completely impacted the game in a positive way for Minnesota. Of the overtime period, minus that Ant 3-pointer, he was absolutely the Wolves MVP.
Totally agree. And if you are not a person who watches the game really intently and you're picking things apart, like defense, like if you hadn't noticed what Nickeil Alexander-Walker was doing with Jamal Murray and just how difficult he was making it for Murray, you probably would not even realize, well, for sure his impact, but you might not even realize he was on the court or how many minutes he's on the court, because he's not taking shots. He's not at the free throw line. He's not having his name called on the PA system in the arena. So it's kind of easy to just lose him if you're not paying attention to those little details like that. But in the overtime, when he hit those 2 3-pointers from basically the exact same spot on the baseline, straight across from the Wolves bench, and took that charge call, or made that defensive play, it was like he went from maybe not on your radar at all to, as you said, Ben, the MVP of the game. I don't know if the Wolves win this without what Nickeil Alexander-Walker did, just even in overtime. He was wonderful defensively the entire game, but what he also gave the Wolves in those extra plays in overtime probably won them the game for them tonight. He was just outstanding. He was fantastic.
Yeah, and to start the game, Jamal Murray didn't even attempt a shot until after Alexander Walker was on the bench. It was when Jordan McLaughlin was in the game at the end of the first quarter was the first time Murray even got a shot up, because Alexander Walker was basically in his jersey for the first 9 minutes of the game. It was really, really impressive. And again, if he scores 19 on 21 shots, fine. Like the Wolves will take that, generally speaking. And so that, fantastic defense. And then also, in the overtime period, it was just like the Wolves needed that energy, but also Kyle Anderson was out for the game. He got hit in the face by, I think, Anthony Edwards inadvertently, of course, and was ruled out for the game. So he's off the floor. Karl-Anthony Towns had fouled out. So Taurean Prince is effectively, he's playing the 4, not effectively, he is playing the 4. So you need that energy. Like there was no option to have him off the floor. He needed to be on the floor on both ends of the floor, being impactful. And Edwards mentioned after the game, in the post-game interview, about how, I think it was in the on-court interview, he talked about telling Nickeil Alexander-Walker, hey, the way they're playing you have to shoot. Like the way they're playing us defensively, they essentially are not guarding whoever the worst shooter is on the floor, worst perimeter shooter is for the Wolves. So at times last game, it was Kyle Anderson. At times it's Nickeil Alexander-Walker. The Nuggets are daring the Wolves to get the ball. First, get the ball to the open man in the corner, and then that man to shoot it and make it. And Alexander Walker made them pay in overtime. And that's something in game 5 on Tuesday, the Wolves are going to have to do that again, whether it's Alexander Walker, Taurean Prince, if Jordan McLaughlin's in the game, Jalen Noel, whoever that is, they have to make those open corner threes when they present themselves. And for stretches into the game, the Wolves weren't doing that. But Alexander Walker was ready to do it in overtime. And that's going to be something that is huge on Tuesday in game 5.
I agree, because it's one of those X factor type of things that can tilt a series, because the Nuggets, they know what Anthony Edwards is capable of. They've scouted Karl-Anthony Towns and all his moves. They got Rudy Gobert figured out in coverages and things like that. It's what is somebody like Nickeil Alexander-Walker going to do and what will he be capable of that the Nuggets aren't prepared for and aren't planning on, that's going to tilt the game. And that's what happened tonight. Like that is the Michael Porter Jr. of Denver in game number 2. Remember, the Wolves had that wonderful third quarter in Denver and led going into the fourth. And then I think Porter Jr. went on like an 8-0 or 10-0 run himself. And he was the total X factor difference maker. It wasn't Jamal Murray. It wasn't Nikola Jokic. And so the Timberwolves had that tonight in Nickeil Alexander-Walker. They also had a great game out of Mike Conley. Kyle Anderson did leave the game after he got hit in the face. So hopefully he's available because he could be that kind of a guy too. He just has not made big offensive impacts in this series yet. So that's the perfect opportunity to have a guy like that come in, give a big contribution, something the Nuggets hadn't scouted or weren't planning on, and boom, there's your difference maker. And maybe the Wolves sneak one out in game 5. And then it's back here to Minneapolis for game 6. I mean, weirder things have happened. No team has ever come back from a 3-0 haul in NBA history to win the series. But even the Wolves making a series out of this, that's just important for this team. That's important for Anthony Edwards and his development. So you can't just go in and hang it up and say it's over. We're back in Denver. We won one. We gave it a run. Like, they still need to fight and find these valuable lessons and experiences because long term it matters for the Wolves.
Yeah, I think safe to say if they come out Tuesday and they're flat, then this doesn't really mean much other than being able to say that they've never been swept in a 7-game series, right? Like, I mean, they have to put forth an effort in Denver Tuesday, and I think they will. I think it'll be a really good game, and then of course all bets are off if it comes back to Minnesota for a game 6. I mean, at that point, like, the Wolves will have a real shot back on their home floor, and then literally anything could happen at that point. And I mean, you referenced the role player stuff. We've talked about that throughout the series. Denver generally has just better role players, or at least they've been playing better. But Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, 5 points in 40 minutes in this game. Bruce Brown, only 1 of 4 on 3-pointers, was good defensively as he typically is, but just seemed a bit quieter. Jeff Green didn't score in 18 minutes. The Wolves role players, even with Kyle Anderson injured, I mean, Taurean Prince didn't have a great game again, and they're going to need him to step up big time. I think that fits into this conversation we just had over the last few minutes about making those corner threes and being ready to go. And like, those guys have to come to play in Denver on Tuesday. And if they do, Karl Anthony Towns, we're still kind of waiting for him to break through in this series. He was better in game 3. He was okay in game 4, although he did foul out. He's got to, like, if he has the game we know he's capable of, like the game against the Lakers in the play-in a week and a half, or I guess almost 2 weeks ago now, if he has that type of a game, then the Wolves have a real shot on Tuesday. And I think we've all just been kind of waiting for that. But at any rate, I mean, like, I think that to me is kind of the other thing is the Wolves have done this. And by this, I mean, I guess still be down 3-1 in the series, but forced a game 5 without Towns really breaking out. Can they get that performance from him that they've been waiting for on Tuesday?
It would be great timing. It would be great to see. He just hasn't found a rhythm. Really, he in his post-game interview, he talked about impacting the game in other ways, not just statistically, but getting physical with Jokic and doing those kinds of things. But I would love to see Karl go like 5 of 7 from 3. Have a Jokic type night, like Nikola had tonight, because Karl, he did not shoot a 3 in the first half, and I finished the game. Did he shoot 3 of them? 2 or 3 of them? Total 3-pointers.
2, I think, yeah.
So it just has not been a good Karl series as far as like the typical offensive numbers we would see from him. And that's just something that he seems to get in this wonderful rhythm when he can just step into a 3-pointer. And he hasn't really done that in this series. He didn't do it tonight. And man, that would be perfect for him to have his breakout game after we've kind of had different guys stepping up and Anthony Edwards kind of on this great pace now. For Karl to come out and have a big one on Tuesday, that would be ideal for the Timberwolves.
That it would be. Game 5 back in Denver Tuesday night. It's an 8 p.m. tip locally in Minneapolis. And, of course, the Wolves win. As we said, they're back in at Target Center later in the week for hopefully a game 6. So that's what would be on tap next. Make sure to follow and subscribe to this show wherever you listen to podcasts. We go live on the POSTCAST on the Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube channel. So be sure to subscribe there to be notified whenever we go live. And again, you can listen to the audio from the POSTCAST as well as the regular daily Monday through Friday Locked On Wolves show on whatever your favorite audio platform is. So be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Wolves wherever you listen to podcasts. A big thank you for listening tonight. A big thank you for watching, and we'll catch you next time.